TV umpire to director, we have a player review. Can we rock and roll, please?
As the oldest cliche in the game goes, cricket is the biggest religion in India. And yet, until today, it was a religion that didn't even allow half the population entry into the temple. They said, send them back to the kitchen. Usko andar, bhej de. And just like that, at long last, this podcast passes the bhej del test. We finally have a woman on this podcast. We were hoping to have more, and we'll be talking about women's cricket for a change. They gave them Nari a chance, and them Naris, they took their chances, didn't they? But enough with the stupid wordplay and the cliches, for here we are. India have won another World Cup, and this time not because they are the backyard bullies who get schedules and venues changed to favor them and to accommodate political wins. They were complete outsiders, barely made it to the semi-finals, and somehow managed to pull off two incredible highs against Australia, whom nobody beats, and against South Africa, who they had never beaten. And here we are, world champions India. The Bits and Pieces podcast is back after a long time. This is what it took to revive this podcast. And we have a big panel. I'm Nitin, and I'm joined by a whole bunch of friends today. Brother Tareque, Sporty Baba, Vipul, Murali Sargopan, Rachana Ranchand, and Varun Murali. Let's jump right into it. I'll start off with Tareque and Vipul because they've actually been at the games. They were at the final yesterday, and I'm sure it is still sinking in for them. It is still sinking in for all of us who are watching on TV. So I'm sure these guys who experience the goosebumps real time must have a story to say.
I actually think Rachana should start. She's the only actual
Oh,
woman.
oh my God. Okay.
Go for it, Rachana.
Oh my God. Wow. So I was just thinking, why was I not in India for this World Cup? What was my reason? And, I was thinking about the time during lockdown when I was obsessively watching women's cricket, even though there was no women's cricket. And I ended up booking my tickets for the New Zealand ODI World Cup, which happened in 2021, 2022. Yeah, my tickets end up getting refunded because only if you're from New Zealand or those countries, you could end up actually going there. And watched so much women's cricket, so much in so much cricket played by our Indian girls. And yeah, felt a lot of heartbreaks over the years. So many finals, semi-finals, more matches, especially run chases where we would just crumble. And I think I got used to the heartbreak after a point. And I, for my own mental health, and I was talking about it to someone yesterday, I actually had to reduce watching cricket or watching, getting so deeply involved when it came to, the Indian women playing cricket. And yeah, with this World Cup, and even actually before the World Cup, we had the India Australia series I was watching very closely. Again, the heartbreak of the 420 runs by Australia, 370 runs by India, and like so close yet so far. And yeah, this World Cup was fantastic. Yesterday was beautiful, and yeah, just really, really happy. It's like this is the day, many of us have been waiting for, and it finally happened.
But you actually have reduced your following of it. I was wondering because you've not been active on the group. I didn't realize that it was because you've actually stopped following Indian women's cricket as closely as you used to.
I try to watch as much as possible. I try to go whenever there are matches happening here. But yes, I think after a point, I'm the kind of person who has an obsessive personality. If I get into something, I get really into something. And I think it just started hurting too much, to be honest. We've spoken about me drinking Old Monk in the podcast previously. Some of you do remember. And yesterday, after I think 2+ years, I opened up my Old Monk bottle again. And
Nice.
it's given rise to a lot of hope when it comes to the team. Of course, there's been a lot of progress in the past couple of years, a lot more investment. People follow women's cricket, people know who the cricketers are. WPL has been fantastic, but there was something missing. We hadn't really clinched that victory. There was a lot of fame, suddenly money coming in, but we weren't seeing those results. But it feels great to have that victory. I have not had that in women's
Yeah.
cricket. I really have not had that. And
Yeah.
yeah, feels amazing.
Fantastic. Vipul, tell us, you have been following and supporting Indian women's cricket, I would say, actually. You've been to several games, right? And Navi Mumbai, I think, has become kind of the
Yeah.
spiritual home for Indian women's team. Unfortunately, Bangalore, after that incident, got sidelined during this World Cup, which was the other kind of venue that really was into women's cricket. But you've been to quite a few games in Bombay, and you were at the big game yesterday, and I believe a few
Yeah,
other games, right, at this World Cup. So tell us, how was it?
yeah. So I am currently actually staying in Navi Mumbai. The ultimate flex is that
Perfect.
the Diva Patil Stadium is 15 minutes away from my place. But yeah, I've been watching women's cricket in India since 2013. I think the first time I appeared on this podcast, I'd mentioned that I had a deal with my boss that I will come at 8 in the morning and leave at 8 at night,
Yeah.
but allow me this time from 2 to 4:30, where I will go to Brabant and see the second innings of the ODI matches, because the ODI World Cup was happening at that point in time. And except for the India matches where you would have two stands which are completely full, I would actually watch these matches with 30 odd people in the stadium. And
Yeah.
those 30 odd people you would keep meeting every
Yeah.
day. And there's hardly any marketing. We There are two matches which are some of the best matches I've ever seen. If I have to go back in time, relive that, see something on YouTube, I won't find anything. There are barely any articles about it. And one thing that I vividly remember was that we were knocked out by Sri Lanka in a day-nighter at Brabant, and the Sri Lankan cricket team did not celebrate. They did not celebrate because they knew that the home team is getting knocked out, so that will kill the interest in the country, which was very sad, and it also summed up like the state of the sport in the country. Uh, but this
Yeah.
was a little different. Like, women's cricket has always been an afterthought for BCCI, and the Diva Patil story is a little fascinating because when Diva Patil started getting matches, it got matches because it was not a premier venue. Now, ironically, the cricketers have started liking the look, feel of the place.
Yeah.
There isn't much to do in Navi Mumbai anyway, so people ended up going to venues with some regularity, and it's a very solid venue. Like, even for bilaterals, you would. There was one match which I think everyone would know, the India Australia match, which went to a super over, and some 48,000 people had attended that. Even after that, there were two, three matches that I went to, and the turnout was 44K, 38K, and these are like weekday matches. So it's a pretty
Yeah.
good venue. And if someone would have told me on Wednesday that the next 5 days are going to play out in this manner, I would have not believed them. And like Tareque and I, we were there for India Australia. The chase in that second innings, it was very uncommon intelligence showed by our team as well. It was just time to perfection. Strategically, we got it right that Jemima will bat out and everyone else around her will take care of the big hitting. And what it felt to be in the stadium, I think it must have been my 20th match in a cricket stadium, but I'd never heard a stadium sound like that before. So that was just insane. And like, there's also this group Bucket Hat Cult. If you don't know about it, you should definitely know. They're very passionate
Yeah.
fans of women cricket. They've gone to they've traveled to Chennai for a women's test match. They went to Vizag. They went to Indore. So I mean, just being with them, it's a lot of fun. On Thursday evening, when the semi-final was done, the next 2 days went in arranging tickets for people, managing mega block with Central Harbour Line, so a lot of things. And yesterday was like everyone, all the roads led to Navi Mumbai, and for people who were there in the stadium, it meant a lot. And it's a far cry from what we saw in Brabant like 12 years ago.
Amazing. In fact, I think on Twitter, somebody had posted a picture with that 2013 World Cup, the empty stands that you had for those games, and the full stadium that you had yesterday during the final, right? If you think about it, 2013 is not a very long time back, right? It's barely a decade ago, and coincidentally was the time when N. Srinivasan was running Indian cricket, and I think his quote, which went viral back then, has gone viral again overnight, where he said, if he had his way, women's cricket would not exist, and he only has a Indian women's team because the ICC mandates that he needs to run it. Indian women's cricket has come such a long way, right, in 10 years. Vipul, you mentioned one thing which I wanted to talk about, right? You said you've never heard a stadium sound the way it did. This is something I experienced. I am a very, infrequent and casual watcher of Indian women's cricket or women's cricket in general. I only watched the semi-final and the final. I didn't follow this World Cup at all until then. I watched these two games fully. One thing that I experienced during both the semi-final and the final was exactly what you said, that the sound coming from the people in the stands was different from what you experience when a men's game is going on. And I wanted to ask you, like, was there a significant difference in the gender mix that you guys could see in the stadium? Tariq, you as well, and you guys have been to several of these games now. So, is there a trend that you observe with more women coming into these
Yeah,
games?
yeah. I think that's a definite pattern, and you see that in WPL as well. See, the thing at Deva Patil is also a very good stadium. Like it's a very easy stadium to get in, get out, and even with the Bucket Hat cult fan group, you'd see people across all ages. There was this 10-year-old doing "Jeetega by Jeetega" chant. I think it's very inclusive that ways. And I think Indian cricket stadiums happen given the design of the stadium, a lot of women don't go. But I think this is as close as it gets to get someone to the stadium.
Nobody has
Amazing.
described an Indian cricket stadium as easy to get in and get out in the last 500 years. So there's something very, very special about DY Patil Stadium. And if it's made it easy, even more accessible for women, mad props to whoever the person is, guard them with their life.
It's a privately run stadium. So I'll give you an example. I put out a list
Yeah.
of places to eat out in Navi Mumbai for fans. So the admin of the DY Patil Stadium page reached out to me and said that can we revamp this? Now that doesn't happen with other things BCCI does, right? So
Nice, very cool. Tariq, so tell us, how was the experience? You've been to multiple games in this World Cup, I think, across venues.
And he's been to multiple World Cups also.
Of course.
I have been to multiple India women finals where we have lost. So let's begin there. So my first women's game outside of India, I had attended a few during the 2016 T20 World Cup in Bangalore. But those we had won, I think we won against Bangladesh where Juran bowled really well and it was fairly easy win back then. But was the 2017 World Cup final. The tickets of which I had actually originally bought even before we knew that India was making the semi-final, let alone the final. India had not played that game against New Zealand as yet, and then obviously India made it to the semi, and then the Harman madness happened in Derby, and it was a India England final. I had bought the ticket honestly thinking that a World Cup final, Lords Australia England, like that is great in itself. Like I was not really bothered about what would happen, and then instantly Lords sold out. It was a great game of cricket in the sense that it was a tense game of cricket, but obviously it was a pattern that would repeat later, which is India were in control of a chase, which then just suddenly went out of control. That was the first time I think I felt like emotional kinship with this Indian women's team because it was almost at the exact moment that I was thinking that, oh, hey, we could win this. And then you have the moment you think that you have something to lose, right? And then the fear and the panic kind of sets in. And that's exactly what was happening in the middle when India's chase collapsed from I think about 35 runs required. They collapsed to a nine run loss. So from there, in the middle, there was a brief stop at the Birmingham Commonwealth Games in the final against Australia. Again, Harmanpreet Kaur in charge of the chase. The English guy next to me is like, "Oh, they got this right." I told him that clearly you don't watch this team enough. So don't think they haven't got this until like the game finishes, and we all know how that went. Again with Herman getting out, and then obviously a similar kind of situation repeated in the T20 World Cup semi-final against Australia just about a year later actually.
Where Harmanpreet again and her bat got stuck in the crease.
And so it seemed like all that, like the unlucky turns and all that fortune that had not gone away that night of the semi-final at DY Patil, all of that fortune seemed to be going away because what other Australian team do you know who has dropped almost half a dozen catches in like one game, or a couple of them being almost sitters and one of them being of all people Alyssa Healy.
Yeah.
So I think that that was sort of redemption in a sense that we were due some luck, I guess. So it was an interesting journey from there to last night to see an Indian team win the World Cup. I actually have the 2017 World Cup scorecard, which I had written by hand, framed in my bedroom as a reminder of looking at that, oh, when would we have our own? Yeah. So the frame is finally going to go down to be replaced by a new scorecard. So that's how it felt to be there because, like Vipul is saying, the sheer energy of the crowd, because there's a lot of people who came in, the Buckethead cult guys who have been around at other games as well. Because I went to Indore, I went to Vizag, I was there at the opening game in Guwahati, where incidentally the Buckethead cult wasn't, because I don't think any of them.
For the people who are not aware, there is a human being who has stepped into the podcast with his name is Jacqueline Fernandez. And this comes from a very beautiful quote from Anjup Chopra, who called the umpire Jacqueline Fernandez. And there have been so many Jacqueline Fernandez memes wearing an umpire's like a t-shirt or like an umpire's white coat that I'm done with Instagram. Anyway, Tareque, over to you.
No, so I think experience-wise, like Vipul is saying, that it just felt like completely different to many of the other venues. And I think the players themselves said, I think Sriti Mandana, in talking to the press after, she said everything, and then posted, I think, a story also where she said, like, Jai DY Patil Stadium. Like,
Yeah.
again, how many other Indian cricketers do you know, like, specifically give a shout out to a stadium?
Yeah, they actually said they were very happy when the schedule came out and they
Yeah,
saw
yeah.
that India
Because
will have a lot of
because
games.
may I please remind everyone on this podcast, the original venue was Bollanpur.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
My God. Yes.
I think all these guys who come there, who have been genuine women's cricket supporters, are the people who made it what it was, and that's why it feels so, personal in one sense, to be able to finally see this team succeed, because everybody has been very invested, like Rachana is saying, in the individual success of this. And I have a very simple approach to this, as obviously not being of the gender of the people who are playing this sport, which is that I've seen it with the Indian hockey team as well, and the Indian women's hockey team is one that I've closely followed also, which is that in each of these cases I'm rooting for all of them, just because I want to feel happy for them getting something, not because I feel happy or basking in the glow, but I just know that they would feel so great because of the multiple levels of sort of obstacles that they have had to kind of tackle or come through to be even playing the sport. So which is why, again, this feels like, I don't think I felt as emotional about an India Australia game in any sport since India versus Australia in the hockey quarterfinal in Tokyo. A game by the end of which I was actually shaking. Like, I was having breakfast, I actually spilled coffee. I'm not kidding, because it was that tense towards the end to see something incredible happening. So the same way here. And this World Cup campaign, I think it's one of those where, look at the levels of destiny and intervention that has happened throughout this. Pratika getting injured, Shafali replacing her, and of all people, her doing the star turn in the final, where nobody expected Herman to hand her the ball. Comes in, takes a wicket, second ball, comes in next over, takes another wicket, absolutely turns the chase around, which South Africa seemed to be quite in control of at that point. And not to forget the excellent innings that she played in the when India batted. So that is one. I've already mentioned the Australia one, which is the sheer luck of all of these pieces falling together for India. Australia scoring 338. Um the scars of Vizag, where India had given up a world record chase to Australia, to be able to, basically, like I was saying, reverse card that same world record chase back at them in the high stakes semi final. I mean, all of it is just utterly incredible. And that's what tournament cricket is sometimes, that India had an up and down group stage. But I remember saying the moment India beat New Zealand, that it's now just two games and it's just survive in advance, that you just need to seize that one moment and you could be on the promised land. And that's eventually what happened, and it almost feels like it was, sort of written in the stars. So all that combined, I think very emotional night. Me and people were discussing that we had been at the Olympics in Paris watching India beat Australia in men's hockey for the first time in 52 years at the Olympics, something we have daydreamed of very often. It was great that people and I were there to witness that. And then this unbeatable Australian team in the ODIs, in women's cricket, that we were. And India has been the only team that has consistently pushed Australia most of the time. All other
Yeah.
comers have actually not. So anyway, all in all, I mean, honestly, hard to describe, because it's been genuinely emotional. But I think one of the greatest matches that we've ever seen was that semi-final. And yesterday's final, the scorecard and the margin does not really tell you the story of just how tense and how good it was and how much it ebbed and flowed. So I think one thing that this tournament has proven is that there is something to the ODI format. And I know that I am an apologist for the format and a huge fan of it, but just the fact that there are so many twists and turns that can happen within and multiple times. I think Vipul said to me yesterday that there are so many different ways you could construct this change to 300 if you are South Africa. So how do you adjust? Which approach are you taking? Like there is so much room for something to happen than a T20. So I guess all of that um, ultimately made it super memorable. But also, just an aside that it has not papered over all the cracks that are there both systemically and with the team. But again, as of now, it's that Chak De India song Badal Pe Paav Hain. So we are all currently floating in the clouds on that high.
Superb. That was beautifully put, Tariq. Lots of thoughts woven in quite nicely. Guys, a big panel, so feel free to jump in anybody at any time as long as somebody else is not speaking at the same time. But yeah, Murali, Varun, Bisi, opening thoughts. Like 20 minutes in, but yeah, please give your opening thoughts.
I'd like to not move ahead with just the match and maybe pause a little bit on Tariq's thoughts about the Australia game. Yes, bigger than the final, probably just by how big it was, the more historic an occasion, the South African game. I I want to really index a little bit on Jemima's post-match talk and the post-match press conference a lot. I did tear up a little bit when she pointed to the stands alone. The women gave her that moment on the pitch after she'd won and she'd bawled her eyes out. And I was tearing up a little bit when she spoke of the quit in the post-match conference, post-match talk, and then in the press conference as well. The amount of vulnerability she shows, there is so much men have to learn, not just men's cricket, not just men's sport, just men can learn from the way she spoke of how hard it was. She described it pretty much like it was an out of body experience that she was going through. She did not know what was carrying her, but as people watching on TV, we could see it every ball she was giving instructions to the person at the other end. Every ball, after giving instructions to the other end, she was giving instructions to herself to tell herself what she needed to do, to tell herself that it's going to be okay. It was as if she was behaving like a friend, a coach, a runner, and a therapist all at once on that pitch for 4.5 hours while losing her energy consistently. It was extraordinary to watch, and for her to be able to put that into words and for her to call it out, saying that this is so that if you are going through something like this, it's going to be okay. Like, I want you to hang in there and reach out for support. I think that was a really special moment, something that we haven't seen enough or at all in the men's sport. And I felt like that made that match so much more special in terms of the way everything just, yeah, huge win, historic, and literally records and stats are there for years to celebrate. But I thought this could be something that people should, understand the gravity of, because it wasn't easy for her, and there was still toxic things that people wrote about Jemima post that game, post the wicket of hers on the South Africa game, and to all those people, to all the general naysayers, I felt like that cup being aloft in Harman's and Jemima's hands was the most fitting ending statement there was.
I'll actually say, I welcome the fact that, there's all this toxic bullshit now that is being directed also at the women's cricketers and not just at the men's team, because this now signals that they have arrived and, people are actually taking note and there is value and, money to be made by pointing your gun at them, right? Which was very different from the condescending attitude or even the way that they were being ignored for many, many years.
Yeah.
There's this one memory that I have from the 2010 World Cup. This was in West Indies when I think the men's World Cup was happening and the women's T20 World Cup was happening side by side. I think Julan Goswami was the captain then, and nobody. And I was working at Cricinfo then, and I remember that nobody even at the Cricinfo desk was properly following that tournament because everyone was following the men's tournament, obviously. And then India gets knocked out. The men get knocked out, right? They lose to Sri Lanka and they're knocked out of the tournament. So they don't make it past the Super Sixes. They don't make it to the semifinals. And then suddenly, right, for the next 12 hours, the entire media contingent is fully gung-ho about the women because the women are in with a shot of making the semis, or they're in the semis. I don't remember what it was. Suddenly, like, Julan is surrounded by like 20 reporters asking her questions like, "Oh, are you guys are now going to bring the cup home because men were not able to." That's where women's cricket was, right? It was like this afterthought of, okay, if we don't have bites to fill from the men's game, then we will go and look for something there. And when the women did badly, it was always that, yeah, okay, we never expected much out of you anyway, so you guys go back and we'll ignore you. And so much has changed, right, from that to them actually getting attention. Like, talking about the way Jemima carried herself through that innings, and like you said afterwards as well, right? There was just so much authenticity in the celebrations and just raw emotions. And if you actually observe, it's not just Jemima, right? You see the way the women carry themselves on the field. There's a marked difference from the way the men go about it. And I think, Vipul, you mentioned, right, when Sri Lanka defeated India in 2013, they didn't celebrate because that is basically how that is just women looking out for other women, right? They're looking out for their sport, and you can see that happening in the way ICC has done so much of great content around this World Cup, right? And I think partly that's because of the subjects being ready to come out and put out a side of themselves, which you don't get to see too much from men's sportsmen. And it's not just this World Cup; it's happened in the past as well, where the women are sharing this moment of sisterhood together and creating so much of content where each one is leaning into each other and leaning on each other, and you can see that there is a certain solidarity, even if they might be adversaries on the field. And you can see that in the way they celebrate when things go well for them. You don't see showboating, you don't see choreographed celebrations, you don't see them get in the face of their opponents, right? There's a lot of genuine warmth, a lot of genuine happiness. There is a lot of combativeness. I think there was one incident where yesterday also, the I don't remember who the bowler was. She flung the ball back at the batsman. I think Woolward was the batsman at that time, and she had to take evasive action. So it's not like they're not competitive or that they're going soft, but they just do it in a far more classy way than what we have gotten used to as the norm in sport, right? And that just very, very respectful. And the other thing that stood out for me, maybe we're cherry picking here, but we've had the two biggest games in the tournament, right? The semi and the final. You had two very, very big, important hundreds being hit, and the person hitting the 100 didn't actually celebrate the 100 because what was more important and what should always be more important is the end result of the game. I don't think I've ever seen a male cricketer not look forward to celebrate, slow down in many cases for a milestone. And yet you see it happen twice in two games in women's cricket, in the most important games of the tournament. And you wonder, hang on, these people are just wired very differently. And maybe this is how everyone should be wired.
Hey, men can do the reverse, man. We can slow down the win for the milestone. That we are
Exactly.
good at.
That's what I meant. Yeah,
We can delay
exactly.
that win and take the milestone because that is worth celebrating.
For the record, Manoj Prabhakar in 1994, when he scored 100 in that controversial match, did not celebrate either.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing to what Nitin was saying because about being competitive and then, of course, off the field, the level of camaraderie. Even yesterday, I think there was Radha Yadav when she came to bowl her first over. These guys were taking a run and she ran straight into the non-striker and that was absolutely a rugby tackle right to the ground. And
Yeah.
obviously it was an accidental tackle and then she sort of like picked up the
Okay.
bat and gave it back to her and everybody was clapping and things like that. And you could see that the obvious competitiveness was there. The same Radha Yadav, if you see the photos of the post celebration of her with Marizan Cap, who they share a very good bond with because they're in Delhi Capitals together. I think there are some photographs that have that vibe and speak louder than any article or detailed interview could, and you could just see that the level of a human touch and a human being that probably Radha Yadav is, who's sort of has Marzan Cap in this bear hug, uh, consoling her after the defeat, and this is the opponents, and there is Jemmy on the other side, and both of them sort of like have Marzan Cap in a hug. And I also remembered that Jemmy mentioned Radha Yadav being among those people who was a big support for her during the difficult time that she was having, because these are the people she was talking to very regularly, other than family, and they were always sort of there for her. So it's clearly sort of like shows in all these small incidents the point that you're making, that it is indeed wired differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really really happy with Jemmy speaking up and opening up about whatever happened in the World Cup, about her mental health, all of that. Like I'm just going back to 2022, which was a World Cup that I watched very closely, and we did terribly as a team. We didn't even make it to the semis. And this point that we've all made about that that how the India team has felt ignored, the condescension of just not even being spoken about. I remember the India team not doing well, but nobody really talking about it. It was just me and some
Yeah.
20 other people on Twitter, upset about whatever's
Yeah.
going on at the World Cup. I mean, and there was some beautiful movements, we've spoken about, Bisma Maroof and her daughter and,
Yeah.
carrying her kid, and we've spoken about the camaraderie. But I think this was like probably the first World Cup which had so many eyeballs. And when India was not performing well, the internet rose to bash them. And this is
Yeah.
probably something that the girls have not faced. And we've heard Shefali Verma say the same thing. Yeah, we don't need to be in the kitchen anymore. Or how yeah, people are now openly calling out yeah, the people who spoke badly about them on the internet. But I think yeah, the fact that she and others spoke up and really spoke about what they went through, I think that's really important. Because it is going to in some ways get easier for women's cricket with the investment and the interest, but in many ways it's going to get tougher at the same time. And being resilient in such circumstances is incredibly important. Like, I don't know if I've spoken about this story in the podcast, but my niece, when she was 9-10 years old, she was in Dubai and she used to play cricket, and she was the only girl in her cricket coaching. And she used to be very good, one of the best in the team, but she used to get constantly bullied by the boys. But she kept persevering. And then in her last match, she did really well. She won player of the match. She got like some very high runs or something. But the bullying just became worse after she did well. And she actually went back to her dad after that, and she was like, "I don't want to play cricket anymore. What's the point? I play well, and I just get bullied by the rest of by the rest of the class." And that moment for me, like, it stuck with me for a very long time, and it is something that yeah, women still have to keep battling, and they need that resilience, especially in a world that is so male dominated. So I'm happy the girls have been talking about it.
For me, like the spectacle of the game itself, it's very rare to see like two back-to-back World Cup knockout matches of such high quality, basically. I think both the India-Australia game and the India-South Africa game. Women's ODI cricket, we've been used to like, I would say low to mid-range scoring thrillers. These are like high scoring thrillers, basically. The greatest performance over the semi-finals and the finals was not by an Indian cricketer, it was by Laura Woolward. I think the innings that she played in the semi-final and even in the final, my God, like, I mean, you would be hard like pressed to see an ODI innings of such quality, like scoring at like a runner ball. And to the point, Nitin, you were making about the crowd in the stadium, there was a lovely Insta pic about how the crowd was cheering on Laura Wolvert after
Yeah.
the game, actually. So I think people recognize that they saw something very special yesterday and over the semifinals as well. Again, thrilled for the individuals this Indian team comprises of. I think it was very clear that all of them have been manifesting this for a very long time, especially the senior group. I think there was this Harman, it was, did a piece in Punjabi on Star Sports where she tells, I think it was either Anjum Chopra or Reena Malhotra, where she
Anjum Chopra basically forgot that it's international feed and started speaking in Punjabi, which
Not
was
the
more coherent than when she speaks in English.
not the only thing that she's forgotten in this tournament.
and like she would have told herself 1,000 times जीतेंगे हम ही basically, and how she was like telling herself that like कुछ भी हो, whether irrespective of what happens at the toss, जीतेंगे हम ही. So I think for the senior group in this Indian team, this has been like long forthcoming. Um, Coming into the World Cup, I did think India stood a decent chance. I think it was fairly clear that barring a major surprise, the semi-finalists would line up the way they would, and it was always going to be a question of who played the best two games after that. But I mean, India got lucky. I mean, the Australia game, there was so much due. Yesterday, the consensus watching the game after the mid break was that India shot by around 20-30 runs. Could have gone a bit harder, but in the second half, there was no due whatsoever. So things went India's way, but it was like for me the best part was like how happy all these players are. Like somebody like a Pooja Vastrakar who's injured, who couldn't make the World Cup, would have possibly made it to the 11. Even she is celebrating the victory, even though she's not part of the squad. So it's very clear this group, like it meant a lot to them. I just hope that like the balance in international cricket stays basically. I do have this concern with women's cricket also that India becomes very dominating going forward, just like we are starting to see in men's cricket. But hopefully that's some time away. But let's see. I do have that concern at the back of my mind.
Actually, we should talk about that.
You mean dominate as in results or money power? Because that is inevitable
I
right now. I mean, after this victory last night, you will find BCCI doing its usual nonsense with the women's game also.
No, see, for me personally, this World Cup has felt very different to, the feeling that I've had when India won the men's Champions Trophy or the men's T20 World Cup or the Asia Cup or all these tournaments that they've been winning recently. Because with each of those tournaments, you end up having a slightly hollow feeling because even if those tournaments are actually hard fought and won fair and square on the field, you can't deny the fact that schedules are altered to suit the Indian team. The venues are picked in a certain way to suit the Indian team. Teams are made to travel far and wide to suit the Indian team, and a certain country is made to play in a different country altogether because India will not host them, and so on and so forth. And the flip side to that is when things actually don't work out, like in the 2023 One Day World Cup, where they lose the final after having played a very hard tournament and dominated it all through. You still are left with the thing that where everyone else is saying, hey, even after manipulating everything and being the boardroom bullies, you guys are not able to win. The fact that the Indian board has been so slow on the uptake with women's cricket means that the women are actually way behind the field, right? It's frankly, of the four semi-final teams, like I think VaMu said, there was no doubt that it was going to be these four, maybe New Zealand with an outside chance. But amongst these four, it was very clear that India would be the fourth favorite at best, because the other three teams are at a different level. You can see that their players are just a lot more confident and seem to just have a lot more. Some of the biggest stars in the women's game are not from the Indian team, right? Of course, we do have our stars too, but the biggest names seem to be from Australia, England, and even South Africa now, which is very different from the men's game. And I don't think that has changed. The fact that they played two great games and won this World Cup doesn't change the pecking order. I think India continues to remain probably the third or the fourth best team in women's cricket, and they will actually feel the pressure the next time they play a global tournament. Now the BCCI coming in, yes, I mean it'll be kind of hollow if they try and now start using women's cricket as a political pawn. I think they won't, because they will continue to remain slow on the uptake for a while. So these women still have a chance to kind of be liked and loved by the rest of the world. And I also think women's cricket, like we spoke about, is a completely different ball game, right? The sisterhood across teams is something that will continue to exist regardless of what buffoons and politicians at the top do. But the other, and I have this question that I want to ask the experts here, right? And I think I would count Rachana, Tareque, and Vipul as the experts on women's cricket. The fact
Hey,
that, sorry,
I am also an expert, da.
He's an expert on women's cricket coaches. Please ask him one specific questions.
so my question is this, right? If we see in this World Cup and if we see the trends in the last few tournaments, really, the Asian teams are really lagging behind. So India kind of still manages to slot in with the top 3 or 4 sort of Caucasian teams, but the other Asian teams are definitely behind. And my question is this an offshoot of where the cultures of these countries are? Is it just that patriarchy has moved far more slowly in these countries than they have in the West? What exactly is it, and what will it take for them to also come out and start matching up to these top 3 or 4 teams.
Bangladesh was really good, man. I'm not going to write off Bangladesh. Bangladesh had some
I'm
good
not,
games. They came
not
close.
writing them off. I'm just
No,
saying.
no,
I mean, they're all good, right? But the fact is, it definitely felt like a two-tier World Cup, two-tier World Cup. Rather,
yeah, yeah.
these other teams were not really pushing the top 3 teams. To be
Okay,
honest,
yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough.
yeah.
No, I mean, I think we all know that a huge part of it is budget and the significant disparities in the men's and the women's budget. There's obviously the patriarchy that exists, the fact that it's very interesting when you think about levels of privilege and who ends up getting selected in sport, even in Bangladesh, Pakistan, etc. Like I think maybe Pakistan is a little bit different. There is cricket is a lot of women are coming from more privileged backgrounds, maybe compared to like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, at least the stories that I have read. But of course, it's a combination of both social and economic reasons. But I think one specific moment that comes to my mind was when Pakistan and Australia they had a series a couple of years ago. And I found out that the Pakistan women's team didn't have a bowling coach. And I think Fatima Sana, after one of the matches, went to Elise Perry and was asking her for bowling tips. And then during that discussion, Elise Perry was like, "You don't have a bowling coach?" And then Fatima is like, "No." And that just shows what a different playing field some of these teams are at. And I've looked at what are which other teams get paid the most, etc. I remember for Sri Lanka, I don't know what the updated numbers are, but a few years ago they used to make 7,500 rupees per match, international match. And I'm not sure if this is Sri Lankan rupees or Indian rupees, but irrespective, that is an abysmal number. And we the number of international matches that they're even able to play a year. So it is extremely commendable, one, to see the kind of resilience that the players end up putting in, but also, the older players, the ones who've been there for a long time. I keep thinking about Chamari Atapattu and how she can change the course of matches. She is so underrated. Like, I remember when she didn't get through the first WPL, and it was like, what, seriously, you're only going to end up selecting England, Australia, New Zealand, and South African players. But yeah, I was just looking at the stats of her: 4 balls, 4 wickets against Bangladesh, in the match that they were about to lose. And it's also ironical that I've still not been able to find a video of that match. Tariq, I think you'll be able to find a video of at least that over. Please send it to me. But that's again the
Hotstar,
I
thing,
don't.
right?
Hotstar has it.
Hotstar
No,
has it. Okay.
It's not available in.
Rachana challenges that Hotstar is not accessible.
Somebody send me a screenshot. But yes, exactly. Like, you're not able to. Yeah, these are things that if the world is not aware of it, again, yeah, how are we going to lift them up? So that's my thoughts.
I'll just add something quickly to what Rachana said as well. That because the setup, like the example of Pakistan not having a bowling coach, and the transfer of knowledge is not happening. I wrote like a whole blog post about it, about like this year's economics Nobel Prize, and the idea of propositional knowledge and practical knowledge. Which is, propositional is, that okay, maybe if you grip the ball this way it should swing, but there is nobody to pass on the practical knowledge of how exactly should you do it in terms of, let's say, coaching manual. And hence is why, like, the development gap in some of these teams, and that stems also from maybe the lack of a professional structure all the way down at the grassroots and the domestic and so on. So I think that's where Pakistan and Sri Lanka have a challenge. Pakistan in particular, I would say. Whereas India, the domestic scene has been improving. Plus, with the BPL, it's a very different situation now. At least 3 players here are breakthroughs of either the domestic scene or WPL, who are very fresh. Sri Charani, who made an outstanding impact on both the semi-final and the final. Not talked about enough, but her overs are extremely critical. I think yesterday she bowled the most number of dots, and I remember me and people are like absolutely cheering on every single dot delivery. Like on the way back from the airport in the cab, I was randomly, like, slapping my thigh and saying, okay, bold Charini, because I could not just get it out of my head in terms of how good that was. So these are people who have been able to break through because of the improved scouting structures and coaching and so on. Um, but the other Asian teams have not. But again, you can see the difference, that Bangladesh probably the most improved side, like Murali is saying. and that's because they have invested heavily in the grassroots from the under 19 and lower levels as well. They did very well at the under 19 World Cup, actually. I think under 19
Yeah.
Asia Cup as well. So I mean, that's where we're at. Is India going to steal that march and become like a dominant force? The challenge is again, like, because it still remains a bit of an afterthought for the BCCI. I don't know what the level of investment is going to be. Australia is still going to be miles ahead. They've lost another semi-final. You all know what happened the last time they lost a semi-final to India, and the reset and the domination. Hence, Alisa Hilly has again said it is going to be a reset for our group. So, and they have a far more reward system.
Yeah.
But I think even though my opinion was not solicited on this matter, I still, I mean, it's kind of symptomatic of what's happening in the men's game also, right? I mean, if you were to look at the other Asian teams per se, I mean, in the global pecking order, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh would be near the bottom. They're probably at a stage where Indian women's cricket was like, say, 7, 8 years back, like talented players, but probably don't have a lot of power. I think that's primarily what is missing, I would say, in some of the other Asian countries. I mean, all said and done, if rain had not intervened, Pakistan would have most likely beaten England also in this tournament. Like, England were very lucky to get away in that game. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's something that will, I mean, you need the first couple of role models, in my view, the batting superstars, to come out of those countries. Once that happens, I think they'll probably catch up in my view.
See, I think hockey also faces a similar situation where the Indian hockey has more money than other countries. But say for the delta impact of those riches, there are a lot of things which are outside BCCI's control or Hockey India's control. Like the socioeconomic reasons are very very prevalent here. Like for an Indian woman athlete, the amount of hurdles she has to go through to actually play the sport professionally are immense. So, and if you compare it with say Australians, say for example, you take any athlete, Ash Barty, Perry, Litchfield, they are the athletes who played multiple sports. So I think if you look at our Indian team, like I think Radha Yadav is one who's like the super athlete, but I think everyone else is this unidimensional cricketer. So we don't have a sporting culture per se. But yeah, with BCCI, obviously we'll get that incremental benefit. But I think overall in Asia, it'll take a lot of time. And even when you say Chamai's example, again, that is an aberration and not the norm.
There are still so many Indian players too that didn't necessarily come from grassroots, right? Like credit goes to nameless coaches who bought
Yeah.
shoes or sent out nets, what do they sent out pads and gloves via some TVS 50 to their house 80 kilometers away for that girl to practice. I mean, they didn't know the spelling of what sprint or endurance or mobility training is, and there are guys in the men's team that can do the yo-yo test by deciding that morning. And then there are women's cricket team people who are like, I have to plan for the next 3 years so I can be a nets bowler for a WPL team. Like that's the kind of horizon that women get to look at, right? So there have been a lot of unspoken superstars, heroes that have contributed to this as well. So I mean, if BCCI could do one great thing, they could just park their, marketing aside and let the Pakistani women play in the WPL. At least that would give them some additional, benefit or income or something like that. But that said, I don't see BCCI really being credited for this. Maybe Jaisha gave free tickets for the match, that I agree, but it's not like massively different in terms of women's sporting culture in
Right.
India either.
No, I think the change in the sporting culture, and to begin with, India doesn't have a sporting culture, and then you have patriarchy on top of that, right? So it's two obstacles in one for women who play cricket, and maybe this is where it begins to change, right? I think yesterday's win is going to be marketed well, it's going to be out there, and these stories will have to be told and heard across the country, and hopefully that makes more women pick up the sport, more girls pick up the sport, and I think the point, that in Australia and New Zealand, you have all these Ash Barty, etc., who are multi-sport athletes. Those are natural sporting cultures, and women who are good at sport tend to play multiple sport, and they come through, right? So you have so many of them. It's the exact opposite, and that's where you want India to go, hopefully, and the other Asian teams too. But let's. I think we spoke about Jemima and very briefly about Harmanpreet, right? just even with a little bit of women's cricket that I've followed, I've been seeing Harmanpreet, be at the center of, the eye of the storm repeatedly, right? So there was that, obviously, that great innings against Australia, which we all remember. But she's been the captain whenever things have gone bad, also, right? Like the defeat in England in that final, or when her bat got stuck against Australia.
The England final was Mithali Raj.
Mithali.
Yeah.
Mithali Raj was the captain, correct? But that's around the time when the controversy with Mithali Raj also started brewing, and she was again central to that. And it was her bat that got stuck in the crease as well. Who was the captain when India lost the final to Australia, got battered by Australia in 2021,
That
was
was
it?
Harman.
So that was Harman,
That was
2020.
That is again. There you go. That was again Harmanpreet. Like, I'm just thinking, right? This is almost a Shakespearean hero that we are talking about. I remember when Tendulkar went to 2011, people were like, "Oh, he's seen so much. He's come close so many times." Hang on, Sachin's not had half the story that Harmanpreet has had as a captain, as a player, when it comes to these World Cup stories, right? And then to come and go through this experience and to win the World Cup, you can literally see the lines on her face, right? And every line tells a story of its own. And if you go and look at every single player in this team, right, there is a story. Right? There's Deepti Sharma, who I think bowled a no ball, right, in semi-final, which against South Africa, which India ended up losing because of the no ball, right, in the last over. And she's now player of the tournament with a half century and a fifer in the final. I mean, that's like incredible performance in the final, right? And then you have obviously Jemima's story, which has been spoken about. Shafali Verma does not make it to the squad. I mean, that is the absolute pinnacle, right? It just tells everyone. I think multiple people tweeted about that. I think Harsha or someone tweeted something very cliche about that you never give up. It doesn't matter if you didn't make the cut, you always be ready. But to actually see that work out for someone, it is literally like every single one of these players has a storyline that goes back many, many years and many, many heartbreaks. And to see it all come together, it was, in a sense, I think, maybe Jemima was right, right? There was someone orchestrating all of this from the back end to make it happen this time, because it just had to go through, right? This was literally the Doctor Strange, the one scenario where it all comes through. And it's also good that, none of these players is really at the end of their careers. They still have a good few years to keep this culture of winning going if they can, and maybe win one or two other big tournaments as well. Who knows? Because I've not really been following the sport, right? So I only went back and found out about this. Then I think like Harmanpreet's name has been coming around, and you see her photos from 2017. She looks so different. She looks young. Her hair has not started graying yet. She's been through so much, right, in all these years, and it's just incredible to watch. So
I
yeah,
remember a couple of years ago on the podcast, one of the discussions was, why is Harman captain? Should it be someone else?
yeah,
Especially after a series of losses at the time, at least. And I mean, I think none of us really had an answer because we were like, who
yeah,
else?
yeah. Well,
Deepthi, Smriti. And, the fact is, she has gotten a lot of hate over the years. I mean, even the entire Mithali Herman controversy. I mean, there's a whole, group of people who are huge Mithali supporters. I mean, including myself, of course. And yeah, I'm glad this happened, for her personally. Like, at least temporarily, she would put a lot of those people, yeah, put them.
Oh, her innings in the semi-final was also like, while Jemima played what she did,
Yeah.
I
It was,
think
yeah, it was,
Harmanpreet was
and
the, she lit the fire.
Yeah.
she loves doing it to Australia anyway.
She
So
gave
I think
The
belief,
hitting.
right?
one other point, because since Rachana mentioned the Mithali Raj thing, it's a nice closing of the circle as well, because yesterday they could then go and present Mithali the trophy. And I mean,
Yeah.
whether that buries the hatchet or not permanently is a different matter, but at least as far as the rest of the
Okay.
world is concerned, it's sort of a nice closure.
But it's been lovely
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
watch her in
indeed.
the press conferences in this World Cup, though. Like, even before the final, she said something like, "We know how it feels to lose, but we are looking forward to seeing how it feels to win, like if it happens."
Yeah, it's a nice thing to say, right? And it's not like she's the perfect character or anything, right? Like there was obviously the Mankading incident, right? Again, which was also Deepthi, and how she
Hey,
stood
it's
up
a
for Deepthi
rule.
was,
It's a rule. She
no, no, it's
did the
fine.
right.
Oh, I'm all for it. I even wrote an
She
article about it. No,
studied
no,
the book.
absolutely. Yeah, it was what she said was absolutely brilliant. But then there was this other thing in Bangladesh, right, where she
Yeah.
broke the stumps and was very angry with the umpiring. So, I mean, she's had her high moments and her low moments. She's been distinctly human. Frankly, that's the only way you can put it.
Yeah.
But it's just great that finally, after so many efforts, after everything that she must have gone through in her life to come through with this win. I think Mamu, you mentioned, that this was two perfect or two very, very good one-day games. I don't remember the last time I enjoyed watching one-day cricket as much as I did. The middle overs are just so full of action and possibility when the spinners come into the game. And every team, right? I think every team has shown that they have good spinners. I think even South Africa had very good spinners in the middle overs. But India spinners, right? Sri Charni and Deepthi are like so good. And the amount of spin, the change of pace, the bite they were getting out of that pitch, and they were really keeping the batsmen honest. And it's not like it's because the batters can't hit sixes, because they were hitting big sixes, right? So it's been ages since we actually saw off spinners perform in one day cricket, right? And I think that's, if nothing else, one good reason to watch women's cricket is there are these aspects of cricket that you just don't get to see anymore in the men's game. Right?
And there was much better shots along the ground, right? Something about Jemima never even clearing, I think,
Yeah,
40 meters in the air. Like, just every shot was along the ground, right? And 127 nearly at a run up ball was an extraordinary innings. Laura Wolfart was setting mad standards for how to bat. Like, as I was watching
yeah,
her sometimes, and I was taking like tips on like, whoa, this is some things that I've never seen men do. The way she manipulated the field, the way she ran, it was really amazing. I genuinely thought she was going to get man of the series, though. This is something I do want. I felt like
player
because
of the series.
player of the
Player of
series.
the
Sorry,
series.
I apologize, because I was thinking about Sachin's man of the series award as well, where of course we lost, but I think similar number of runs at a much lower average, and they gave it to him. I felt like what she did with this team while captaining through the thing was extraordinary. Not taking it away from Deepthi Sharma, I think she was extraordinary too, but I really thought maybe they'd have given it to Laura just for what she'd done to bring this team this far.
Busy as the pronunciation expert on this podcast, like, can you elucidate how Laura should be pronounced?
Oh, Laura should be
How Laura should be
pronounced.
pronounced? Okay.
I,
Munde baro Laura.
I have something to rhyme with Laura for this fellow.
Nice.
But honestly, we should really commend Laura Wolfhard also because she took up the captaincy probably 18 months ago in a very tricky time. I mean, Danevan Nirka first was dropped. The captain was dropped because of fitness reasons. They saw some of the best players retiring because of all the South African politics, whether it's Shabnam Ismail, Lizelle Lee. And then Sunil Lee's taking up the captaincy. Then she's struggling with the captaincy, and then Laura Wolfhard taking it at such a young age as well, and being so incredibly consistent at the same time. We've seen a lot of captains, I mean, new captains come, struggle with their performance, and Laura Wolfhard has just she just lifted the team. It's amazing. Like, I honestly thought like there was going to be a question between South Africa and New Zealand, and New Zealand does have like a veteran team, but yes, yeah, kudos to her as well.
And also how she's rallied the
Lovely.
entire team in
And
this World Cup. Her entire idea was that we'll do this for Madison Cup, who was playing her fifth World Cup, and I think she won't be playing any. I think this will be her last World Cup. So I think what Laura has done with the bat, and she didn't start that well, but by the end of it, she was the standout performer. So even in ICC contents, they would ask players to pick which is your favorite batsman from the other team. And when Australia and South Africa had to happen, I think all the Australian players were just fanboying about Laura, which was like very very unreal to watch.
No, I think the rest of the South African squad also, like, this is a squad still under development. Perhaps once the cap goes, they will need somebody as inspirational figure to be the replacement. But they are developing some terrific players within there. I think Anneke Bosch is one of them. Anna Dixon is another. We saw what Nadine de Klerk did to India. I think Chloe Tran is again like been around for a while, and even with Malaba as well, the left arm spinner. I think they've got a good mix, and a few youngsters coming through as well. So I think that they're a team to watch out for. Honestly, like the next ICC event, that's the T20 World Cup in the UK next year. I think South Africa is like the team to watch because they have made in the women's game, they have made the final of the last three ICC events, and missed out by a whisker in like.
And Rachana will be reporting live from the stadium, right?
yeah, will you be watching, Rachna?
I have my tickets for three India games.
Yeah, oh yeah. Of course, of course. I blanked out. Yes, I will.
Yes.
I will be there. And I
Excellent.
already reached out to the bucket hat girls to say that if you need like a UK ambassador, I'm your person.
Okay.
Tareque is traveling as well.
Of course, he's organizing the tournament. What is this? Of course, Jesha will be there. Tariq will be there.
Tariq,
We
can
know
you
that.
find out if Anjum Chopra is also traveling, please? I need to prepare accordingly.
That's the reason.
Cancel her visa, please.
That is the reason I travel to the games. The games where you don't have to listen to Anjum Chopra.
Yeah.
Gosh. On that note, any closing thoughts for N. Srinivasan, Boria Majumdar, and other champions of women's cricket?
I think they can just simply officially retire their tired cliches and stereotypes and lines of thinking on why women should not be playing cricket.
You are being very politically correct, brother T.
No, I'm being politically correct mainly in keeping with the theme of the podcast that we'll be talking about how the women's game is inspiring people to be better. So I don't think being
Wow.
petty is going to help.
So that's a nice way to put it. Okay, then on that note, winding up this episode of Bits and Pieces, it's a very happy episode. Not as much of the usual sarcasm and jokes and pulling of each other's legs, because the subject matter warranted that our hearts are warm,
No.
even the wolf hearts amongst us. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Bits and Pieces. On behalf of Vipul, Varun, Bisi, Murali, Rachana, and Tareque, this is me, Nitin Sundar, signing off. Please let your friends know about this podcast, hit like, subscribe, and yeah, see you again on another episode.
He will be
Say bye.
regular henceforth. Please watch out.
Lehra do.
No.
Tegi.
Oh my God.
Tegi.
Please stop.